Masih Alinejad is an Iranian-American journalist and activist who's been targeted by alleged Iranian hitmen for praising the 2020 assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The Iranians have also targeted President-elect Trump and other senior officials in his first administration as they seek, the Iranians do, retaliation for that killing. In tonight's Common Ground segment, a bipartisan effort to punish criminals cooperating with foreign governments on serious crimes such as murder for hire. Joining us, Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst and New Hampshire Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan. Senators, thanks for being here. I want to talk about your bill that you're going to put together and get in process, but I want to first talk about this pressing issue overseas with Russian President Putin saying he's lowering the nuclear deterrence for Russia in response to these long-range missiles being used from Ukraine into Russia. You're on armed services. How concerned are you about that in the big picture?
Well, President Putin has been threatening this for a very long time. Anytime the Biden administration stepped out a little more, offered more up to the Ukrainians, then Putin would come back and say, this is escalation. We are going to push back. Now, this is very concerning, which is why I do look forward to a Trump administration. We do know that President Trump is going to be very aggressive in attempting to negotiate a peace settlement, and that's what we need to get to sooner rather than later.
Senator Hassan, politics aside, there is concern from both parties. You hear about, starting World War III. Where are you on this?
Well, look, the Ukrainian people are trying to repel an unjustified and brutal invasion by Vladimir Putin. Autocrats around the world, China, Iran, North Korea, are watching whether we are going to stand with the Ukrainian people for freedom or not. Americans stand for freedom and against autocrats. And I think it's very important that we've been able to support the Ukrainians as they try to protect their sovereignty. Obviously, one of the things that the Ukrainians need to decide how and when to settle this war, but they also need to know that they've got the tools they need to make that a meaningful negotiation when and if they decide to do that.
I mean, are you both hopeful that that negotiation is possible sooner rather than later? Or are you kind of skeptical that it's going to develop?
I remain hopeful, Brett, and I do think that we have to be very aggressive in bringing both President Zelensky and President Putin together and have this negotiated. There are too many lives that have been lost, a lot of expense that has come from the U.S. taxpayers into the region. I as well believe that Ukraine needs to come out victorious. I think that is really important, but we do need a strong personality, President Trump, that will bring both sides together.
And war is obviously a terrible thing and the lives lost are horrible, but I would also just say we have to be clear-eyed about who Putin is, and we need to make sure that Ukraine is in a position to come out on the better side of this, because they are just protecting their sovereign territory and standing for what we have here at home, which is freedom.
Let me talk about your bill. It's a Deterrence Act, murder for hire ordered from abroad, targeting current, former U.S. officials, judges, law enforcement, families, kidnapping, conspiracies and attempts, stalking with intent to kill. This bill essentially would do what, Senator?
Yes, it would enhance penalties for those criminals that are engaging with foreign actors, other countries, our adversaries. They're basically actors for hire here in the United States. So anytime they are targeting, say, President-elect Trump, when they are targeting someone here on U.S. soil, enhanced penalties, longer prison sentences. And Senator Hassan and I will continue to develop the bill. We want to make sure that we get it right before introduction. It is called the Deterrence Act. And what we're trying to demonstrate is to our adversaries, you cannot target Americans on American soil.
Senator?
Yeah, look, this is outrageous behavior by Iran, right? They are working with criminal organizations in the United States to kill people on American soil. That is unacceptable. You know, we talked again about what do we do in America to demonstrate to the autocrats around the world that we will not stand for this. And the deterrence bill that Senator Ernst and I have is really our effort to say, look, there are already serious criminal penalties for gangs or criminals who engage in this behavior on American soil. But when they act in concert on behalf of a foreign government, what we want to make very clear is those penalties will be even more severe. That not only is important for deterrence, but it gives our law enforcement, our prosecutors, extra leverage against these gangs and really helps disrupt them.
And when you get the I's dotted and the T's crossed, you think this is a major bipartisan together.
This is very bipartisan. If you look at what Iran has been doing, targeting former President Trump, soon to be President Trump. Yes.
Senator Hassan, after this election, which was obviously very divisive and the country was split, and it, you know, any election gets that way, it seems, every election. What do you say to people who look at Washington and say, this doesn't happen, working across the aisle, it doesn't really happen?
You know, one of the things I wish more Americans could see is that we do, first of all, get along. Joni and I started the day at the gym together. She was there earlier than I was, though, I will be frank. But we get along. I get to see the people of New Hampshire. Senator Ernst gets to see the people of Iowa doing things together regardless of political affiliation all the time, being good to each other, building their communities up together. We need to reflect that in Washington. And I'm really glad you do this segment because your viewers, all Americans, need to understand that there is common ground in Washington, D.C., as there is all across our country, and we need to find ways to focus on moving together and compromising, which, by the way, also means compromising means sometimes you have to do something you wouldn't do yourself, but it's a way to move forward. I think it makes us more creative and stronger.
Sometimes it's easier to get to no than it is to get to yes,
Right,
but
absolutely.
it's interesting. You two work together. You're the two first states, you know, in the presidential
right.
process, which seems so long ago that we were in New Hampshire and Iowa. Final word, Senator Ernst. Is this going to be a bumpy process, this confirmation process?
Well,
I mean, is it going to be ugly?
I don't think it's going to be ugly if we are properly vetting the nominees as they are coming forward, and there will be a thorough vetting of the nominees. But Brett, you know very well that there was a mandate in this last election, and President Trump will be very aggressive about the way he approaches our federal agencies. And we need the folks that can go in and shake up these federal agencies.
And you agree, you work across the aisle a lot.
Absolutely.
All right. Senators, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for
Brett.
having us.
You can see all the Common Ground segments on my podcast, Common Ground. Find that in the All-Star Panel podcast under the Bret Baier Podcast, foxnewspodcast.com, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts. You can also see the discussion on the Fox News YouTube page. Up next, tens of thousands of illegal immigrant children lost in the chaotic border crisis. What's being done to find them? And later, the panel reaction to the latest developments in the Trump transition.